Morning. Good morning. I hope this day finds you well. I hope you are living your best life, or at least trying to get there. It's not the destination, it is the journey, right? And as usual, I'm live in the morning. I've gone live way too much. It's kind of addicting. But James Best isn't live, so what else am I going to do, right? You know, there was a point where James Best was my morning routine when I was at home. I get up a couple hours before my wife. I'd sit on the couch, drink my coffee, and James Best would be live. Give him a little hell, making me either laugh or angry, and you know. And there's somebody driving up to my truck here. Okay, she was looking for a truck driver, but not this truck driver. Good. So we'll let everybody gather in here. And, you know, look at the title. Ego is the echo chamber. I wanted to put the whole title, but I had to fit Morning Coffee Live because, you know, it's what it is. I don't have coffee in my hand yet, but can you hear it brewing? Can you smell it brewing? It's almost done. It's almost done. Can't wait. But the whole saying is, ego is the echo chamber and you're too loud. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about audio. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do and that I almost went into was sound engineer. I have a good ear for sound. And by that I mean I can go to any club, any nightclub, any live setting, whether it be music or DJ or whatever, and I can tell you everything wrong with the PA on a frequency level. You know, life is on frequencies. Life is nothing but frequencies. And for example, you start your day off on a bad note, like, you know, you stub your toe, or, you know, your brakes are frozen, you know, that kind of thing. And it seems like the rest of the day it's just like one thing after another. That's a frequency that you're on. But sonically, there's frequencies as well. You know, dogs only can hear certain things, you know, that kind of deal. But, you know, most nightclubs, the mistake that they make is they got too much low end and not enough mids. You know, in a band setting, you have the guitars up here and your bass over here, you know, so you got your low end and your high end. You know, the cymbals are over here on the high end, your bass drums over here in the low end, but there's nothing to fill the mids. And as a guitar player, to get a really good sound, a lot of people do what they call the scoop sound, especially in the thrash and death metal world. You know, you do the scoop sound where you take out all your mids on the equalizer and you're just like, you know, now that works when you're by yourself, but when you're with a full band, there's nothing to fill the middle. You got to fill that middle up. And so, like Bob Rock once, when the Black Album came out, he taught Metallica how to use that mid-range to be heard better versus just cranking up the lows and mids. If you listen to Injustice for All, which, by the way, I've got my Metallica shirt on. If you listen to Injustice for All, it's all scooped, whereas the Black Album is more sonically acceptable because they fill in those mids. But I have a good ear for picking that kind of stuff out. And unfortunately, though, to get into that world, there's like a really good college called Full Sail down in Florida. But getting into those jobs are barely at minimum wage, if at that, you know, barely above minimum wage. And when you're a father of 3, you can't really be the guy making minimum wage doing something you love and justifying that. So let's pour this coffee. Top this thing off a little bit. Anyways, the reason why I talk about that is because an echo chamber, you know, you go into a room, and if there's no sound dampening, now I tell you what though, it could be an advantage. Okay, there was one of the albums I recorded where the room's acoustics was perfect for that perfect reverb, and so we recorded all my vocals in this big room. And then the first time I ever recorded in a studio, my guitar amps were actually in a bathroom because the acoustics in there were really good. And I'm getting somewhere with the story, okay? When you have an echoey room and you're yelling, you're just making it worse. You know, where I'm parked at, I sneezed last night, had my windows open, and I could hear echoing off the building over here. It was kind of funny. But when you're yelling in an echoey, empty room, you really have to love the sound of your own voice. And to me, that's what social media is. That's what this YouTube platform is. This is an echo chamber of me yelling at you, me yelling in general. And to this day, I still can't watch my own live feeds, replays. You know, it was suggested to me that if a person could, and I know other channels that do this, you take your live feed, you take the little nuggets of the hour-and-a-half live feed that might, you know, there might be like, you know, 5 minutes of decent information, and you cut it up and you put that out after the live feed. And I know several YouTube channels, that non-trucking related channels, that do that. And I thought that's a good idea, but I really have trouble listening to myself. So obviously there's something about myself I don't like. So let's go to the live chat comment section and start reading off some comments. Terry's in the house. Thor and Thunder. Other Trucker James Best. Scott SR Logistics. The Great Freight Sage Logic. Hey man, I like your new flashy logo thing. That was cool. Jeremy Rice. John Armstrong. Alexander Rocker. Lightbright. Lord of the Snore. Bill. Pale Rider TV. I was glad to see that Pale Rider was up and running. I forgot to call him yesterday. I was going to call and check up on him, but obviously dealing with these loads and, you know, like trucking, there's been a couple of changes, so I want to talk about that for a minute. Paul Wibbles, RN, Lugnuts, Booby, GNC Family Trucking, Jesse Bennett, John, I can smell it, Sanka, Sanka. That's from Fast Times at Ridgemount High. Wasn't he talking about Sanka? You smell something. TJ Jones. Josh the Vegan. Good morning. New light, new No, life is numbers like no, life is frequencies. Numbers are a frequency there, Thor. SF Medic Smith, which I know who that is playing guitar. I wish I had my guitar on the truck. Yesterday would have been a good night. Last night would have been a good night. Crate amps are decent and cheap. The Crate Stealth is the king. I wish I had mine still. Full Sail is super expensive school. That's right. Pay for the expensive school. Have to live in Florida for a minute, which, you know, in the wintertime wouldn't be a bad thing. And then to come back only to fight for 50 other guys that have the same thing for a show in Branson. You know, it just didn't see the, you know. Crate amps have great distortion for poor players. I disagree. So we're talking about amps. Josh, they were taking acoustic lessons, but we moved. I see the Maiden banner flag in the sleeper. I was jamming some old school Nuclear Assault yesterday and thought of you. Awesome, Twitch. Yep. I think the only album I own by Nuclear Assault is Handle with Care. The one before that's good, but I don't think I actually own that one. Handle with Care came out at the time that I had discovered thrash and was like buying anything and everything. And Brainwash, though, that's a great song. Oh, Great Freight Stage Locket. Did he have a guitar question? Yeah, Full Sail is super expensive. Save some money, hit the local pawn shops. Thanks, call me after this. Okay, Pale Rider. You're not alone on that. I can't stand the sound of my own voice either. You know, it nailed it. How's it going? Alexander, here's the thing. When I first started doing vocals, when you do vocals in a live setting, you got the PA system, you have the room, and you don't realize how you sound for reals. It sounds weird with the loud PA and everything. You're hearing how your sound reverberates off everything. And when you go into a studio, and this is the same for any instrument, guitar, bass, drums, anything. When you go into a studio, now you're under a microscope. Now every little crackle, every little ding, you know, every little you know, is heard, like in these headphones that make you go, holy crap, I sound like crap. So for the longest time, I liked how my clean vocals sounded, except when I was in the studio. Now, mind you, I was in pitch, I was in key, but I didn't like my tone. That was the thing. Let's turn this dumb APU off. I have to say, this carrier, knock on wood, has been a champ through this whole polar vortex crisis I dealt with. That thing definitely is due for an oil change, though. Yukon. Zzz. Yukon is buzzing. You heard it there first. I can't download Brainwash from Apple. It's the only song they won't let me get on the music. There used to be an app where you can take a song off of YouTube and turn it into an MP3. Of course, you know, it's one of those apps that, you know, they just give it the inability to update, and you know, eventually you can't use it anymore. But I downloaded quite a few MP3s that were hard to find, because if I can't find it on Spotify, I can usually find it on YouTube. When I worked for Sally Mae student loans, I got to see the cost associated with all the different schools. Oh, okay. Sometimes I isolated drums and acoustics, but most bands love the live room in my studio, 2,400 square feet. In Yukon, if you're still awake, when you mic up a cabinet, a guitar cabinet, there's two ways to do it. If you of course you got the microphone in front of the speaker, but sometimes you want to be off, and then another time you can have, if you're recording, now live you can't do this, but recording, you have a mic kind of set back so you can get kind of get some of the low ends from the way the speakers are distorting, and you get a really good sound, so you get a full room sound. Now they got all these processors that you can literally get that off a click of a computer. But what are the changes? Okay, so James Best is referring to my comment earlier about some of the changes at Like Trucking. Nothing bad. It's just like Jeff is working with this new TMS system, which is like if you Schneider guys remember, it's like a workflow system. It's actually pretty cool. He showed me some of the ins and outs on it on a Zoom call the other day, and it was pretty neat. I mean, if I had to track 15 trucks, that'd be the way I want to do it. But with that, it's still an experimental stage, so we're having to do like 4 check calls for every load. If you do a load off an app, you got to do the app of the broker app, and then you got to do the trucking office app, and then you got to do the new app. And so I'm sending like 15 check calls for each load. It's just kind of funny. And then of course, for those of you who don't want to own a truck but want to work off the spot market, there is a contractor here that's wanting to put guys in his extra trucks. He's doing so well, he has extra trucks. I can barely keep one running, let alone have extra. So I thought for the longest time I had a Rod Sterling voice until I had to do a presentation in high school and could hear through the speakers I sounded like Hank Hill if he was drunk. That's usually, look, working in a studio, I can tell you how many times I've watched musicians with the big ego get in the studio and get completely depressed because they realize they're not as clean of a player as they are, or as they thought, because again, when you're in a live setting, you got the guitar, you're like, you're just like, yeah, and the speakers are blaring, the sound man's like rolling his eyes because you're like, yeah, man, I'm on a big PA system, but then to put a microphone this close to your speaker like that, and you hear every little mistake, you're just like, wow, I'm not as good as I thought I was. And every musician that's ever been in a real studio will tell you the same thing. Like, holy crap, so similar to Truck Logics, but more money. It goes way deeper than that, James Best. This system is, and I don't know if Jeff wants that system out there or not, but it's pretty powerful. I mean, it's up there with the workflow at Schneider. I mean, it's pretty powerful. Studio will humble you, yes. And what now? With that being said, one of the cool trends that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this all across the board, doesn't matter what genre of YouTube you are, the podcast microphone, like James Best, he went and got a microphone, and he's in a room, and he's sitting down, and he's doing his thing, right? Now, he said he hates the green screen, but the green screen can be kind of cool. I think it's cool if you want to show the stuff behind you, like on your computer. I think that's cool. But most of the time, most podcasts either have a bookshelf, or if you're talking philosophically, you got books behind you. If you're talking about music, you got music behind you. If you're talking movies, you got movies behind you. If you're talking tools, you got tools behind you. Well, evidence of tools, because YouTube doesn't let you show that stuff on a live feed. But on a podcast style, regular recorded video, I think you're okay. And you guys know what I mean by tools. And I like the trend of the audio. I like the trend of the good microphones, and because one of my pet peeves, and I was guilty of this myself, is when your intro is way louder than your actual audio of the video. I was guilty of that. And so every time I upload a vlog and I use that Snowlord intro where it's on fire and all that, I literally have to turn it almost all the way down to match the audio to the rest of the video. And that is one of my pet peeves, because there are some YouTubers that they have outros that will literally blow your speakers, or headphones if you're listening, and it's because you turned it up just because you struggle to hear them, and so again, as the sound engineer in me wants to like just take that person and wring their neck, because you're like, balance your sounds out, and it's all about frequencies. So if you got a really high pitched annoying intro or outro that's like 15 times louder than your voice when you were talking, I will turn off a video because of that stuff. Makes me think of the song Polka Never Dies by the Dreadnoughts guys with big egos. Yep, I keep forgetting to activate my load. Yes. That's why there's DBX compressors, right? Except Too Mean to Die is awesome. So, like for example, I was watching Spectre last week when he was talking about all the bad luck he's had. And his audio was good, and the people on the phone was like they were in the same room on the same microphone. That to me is impressive. If you're going to take phone calls in a live setting, I think that's the way to go, because other than, beyond that, the speakerphone thing just doesn't cut it, because again, you're turning it up, but then the sound is imbalanced. Now this is just me critiquing a lot of the stuff that, I don't know, kind of annoys me. Now, the good thing about the StreamYard thing is that, if it's all balanced route, like sometimes there's one person louder than all the others, but like Pale Rider's sound seems to be, when he does the StreamYards on Friday nights and I join in, it seems to be pretty balanced, but yeah. So, but yeah, Thor, you'll get a system going. I've in some of these apps, some of these broker apps, you got to activate the load on that too, because if not, you get a bad score. Like JB Hunt, you got to dispatch yourself. You have to do all the check calls, and you have to send the bills for a grade A, because the better your grade for the broker, the better rate you can negotiate. Just spend 20 grand for Pro Tools and Robot Right. Pro Tools. Yukon, I don't know how much experience you have with Pro Tools, but I know that some of the editing, the digital editing in some of the studios I've been, I don't know if Pro Tools is like this. I think it is, though. Those of you who listen to Metallica, Saint Anger, it is a Pro Tools nightmare. You can literally hear the digital edits, and what I mean is you can hear the clicks. Like when you record a guitar solo, they got what they call punch you in, right? And so you've got your riff, your section, and the engineer has got to go punch you in and then and then punch you out. And if you got a good ear, you can actually hear those punch ins. You can actually hear that click. And one of the worst failures of Saint Anger by Metallica, I like some of the songs on that, believe it or not, but the production quality was so horrible. The frequencies were all over the place. You know, Lars drums, snare drums sound like a tin can. And it is pro tooled altogether. If Metallica hadn't included the DVD of them actually playing the songs in full in a studio setting in one take, I wouldn't have believed that those songs were actually played all at once in the studio. And what a lot of people don't realize is most songs in studios aren't played all at once, especially in a heavy metal setting. Like, for example, the first 4 Metallica albums, Kirk Hammett doesn't play any rhythm. He just goes in there and does the solos, whereas James Hetfield records rhythms on both sides. You know, in Justice for All, there was like almost 10 layers of guitars. But you can hear the editing software sometimes if you're listening really closely. So, but anyways, I guess we turn this into a full sound lesson versus just, you know, in what the title was about, which, you know, the echo chamber. And you guys have seen this trend of like the reels and the shorts and the stories, like on Facebook, Instagram, and their own, and TikTok is kind of based off that pattern too. And it's almost addicting to like go through reels, you know, because it's so easy. Watch for 5 seconds, scroll. 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 And I realize that when I do that, number one, it's like a slot machine kind of, you know, what am I looking for? It's a reward, right? And it's very energy draining. And I guess because my intentions are different with my YouTube channel, I'm not doing this for attention per se. Like, I'm not, like, you got a lot of people that will do these wild things just for the attention, just for the, you know, like, hey, I'm gonna jump in that pile of ice, you know, and see what happens, or I'm gonna take a, you know, a kick in the groin area and film it, put it on shorts, and then so people can laugh, you know, and you get addicted to those likes. You get addicted to, oh man, I got 58 thumbs up on this video, you know, you get addicted to that. And what I see is the human brain is changing. You know, the Social Dilemma show talks about that, talks about how it's literally actually changing the chemistry of how our brain works. When was the last time you were bored? When was the last time that you were able to sit in a room of silence and just enjoy that silence? No, you've always got to be scrolling. You know, you can't, you know, there's almost no time to think. And I think that's the design of social media. There's no time to think, you know, just time to react, whether it be a positive or negative reaction. You want to, you know, last night, my wife called. I was in the middle of some phone stuff with my business, and I was listening to a podcast that was live last night. And, you know, there's 4 people talking. They're all shouting, you know, and yelling about the government and this, that, and the other. And my wife calls in the middle of that, and I swipe red, you know, so I could finish what I was doing, because the podcast is mainly background noise. At one point, I stopped the podcast. I called my wife when I was done and talked to her for about an hour and a half, and then I just had to sit in silence for like I don't know, 15 minutes just, and I went for a walk. It was a really nice night last night. It was a perfect night. That's why I took those 2 pictures on Instagram. And where I'm at, there's a Southern Pride convention. The company that Truck and Review channel is signed on to or owns or something. And so there's like a bunch of these big trucks. They were having a little gathering last night, so I tried to stay out of their way. But it was a nice night last night. But sometimes you just got to have that silence, right? You watch so many echo chambers. Now, YouTube, you go through YouTube notifications, you watch like a Pale Rider video, and then you watch a 10-minute another trucking video, or you watch a 10-minute gun video or something like that, and then and that's it. But those reels, man, that's like instantaneous and condensed and just like, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it overwhelms the brain. I don't think that's a healthy habit. I don't usually, the only thing I add to my Facebook stories is music stuff, like bands that I'm listening to on Spotify. That's pretty much it. So and No Base for Justice album. Brian, what happened, look, there's a point in one of the songs where you actually hear the bass guitar, but pretty much what they did is they turned him down, and the guitars are like layered like 10 times. So you got one bass that's low in the mix against 10 guitars. Of course, it doesn't sound like there's a bass at all. But there's like a lot of YouTube channels where a bass player has come in and mixed their own bass lines to that album. It sounds really good. And I'm always hoping that Metallica would remix that. I don't know if they'd still even have the masters to remix it. They can, they can remaster it, but they can't remix it. Maybe, remastering is just changing frequencies in the final thing, but to remix it, that would be cool. I only use Pro Tools to Final. I track on a Neve console. Cool. Or jump in a pool in winter. John. Bob Rock lowered his standards for sure. Yep. So look, I think that what happened with Saint Anger was Bob Rock was over it. It was a contractual obligation. Metallica, if you watch some kind of monster documentary, you really, the band was in turmoil, but they're such a money-making machine that the label was like, look, I don't care if you guys want to kill each other, we got to sort this out because we still need to make our money. So, and you could tell it in the songwriting that it was just all over the place. And so I think that Bob Rock probably had to salvage a bunch of crap just to get something out there, and I think that's why that happened. So, social media is the primer for the transhumanist agenda, integrating the human being with technology. It's wicked. I agree with that, Yukon. I actually agree with that. Yukon, there's a lot of stuff that you and I agree with that would probably surprise you, except the flat Earth. I'm not on board with that. But hey, to each his own, man. To each his own. I think a lot of that is people wanting to vicariously interact with what they're watching so as to satisfy their inherent desire to be sociable, but without having to go through the effort to do it in person. Look, as a human being, you can sit there and say, oh, I'm a recluse, I'm a introvert, I don't like people, I don't want to be around people, and all this. You could say all that all you want, but the reality is you want to be a part of something bigger. That's the frequency. I mean, you ever watch, like, one of my favorite things to watch with, like, speaking of bands like Metallica or Iron Maiden, is when they do their sing-alongs. Like when they have 50,000 people singing at the same time. That always gives me goosebumps. I always love seeing that. And because that's energy, that's a frequency. And that frequency is, I got to pay attention to time. I got to load the pickup later. That frequency, you got a whole bunch of people on the same frequency, and that's a powerful force. We all want to feel like we're a part of something big. We all want to flow in that river, and go our direction. And the people that have the toughest lives are the people that aren't willing to accept that they need to be part of something bigger. And so you have discontent. Discontent breeds poverty. Greed breeds poverty too, but discontent breeds um, drug addiction, alcoholism, um, doing bad things, victimizing, discontent. No one knows how to live and let live. A person that wants to mess with somebody else just for the sake of messing with them is because they're not content in their own world. Like whoever swatted Pale Rider when he was live is a person that is miserable in their lives, and they're not honest with themselves to realize that. And so they got to take out their anger by attacking other channels or attacking other people, both whether it be physical, mental, online, in person. Discontent is what creates a lot of the problems that we have. I mean, greed is just the sake of not being content with enough, not being content with abundance, not having gratitude for what you have. You take children in a setting like a playground or like a playroom setting, and you got one kid that's got all the toys, but he's looking at that other kid going, hey, you've got the one toy I want, not being grateful for the toys that he has. That's a human nature. That's a human trait. And so we go through life trying to change that frequency, either trying to live with it or give into it. You can call it evil, you can call it the devil, you can call it whatever you want. But the reality is that discontentment breeds into no hope. No hope is what kills. A person that commits suicide has lost all hope. And so this discontentment, and what I see social media doing is creating discontentment. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if you saw somebody that drove a nice car and you really wanted it, there's envy. And you're like, oh man, I really wish I had a car like that. Well, your brain's going to do one of two things. Or three things. You're either going to want to beat that guy in the head and steal the car, or you want to find out how he got that car, or you're just going to be mad at your own life and be discontent and thinking that you'll never get that car yourself. And so my position is I want to be the guy that doesn't even think that car is even important for me to have those feelings for. In other words, go beyond the material possession, and then also learn how to get that car for myself. So, but not be so materialistic that, because here's what happens. Let's say you figure that out. Okay, now I've got my own car. Now I've got my own really nice, awesome Corvette or whatever. Then it's not enough. Now what? That Corvette did not bring you happiness that you thought it would, because envy said, hey, this is your path to happiness. But it really wasn't. And so what happens is that creates discontent. I have a very rich friend that told me that he has rich friends that have killed themselves, and they had the perfect life. They had everything they wanted, everything they needed, perfect family, but there was still something about their lives that gave them no hope. And that is what the struggle of life is. And so to combat that, to feel is to be part of something bigger. I guarantee you that James Best would not go live for 10 hours at a time if he only had like 5 people in there all the time. But when he's got 60, 80, 100 people in there, it makes, this is not a knock on James Bass. I'm talking about any YouTuber that goes live. You feel like you're part of something bigger. Now you're not in an empty room. You're in a room with people that are like-minded, that have the same goals, that have the same dreams, the same aspirations. You're part of something bigger. And that's what we're all looking for. Whether you do that through religion, through social media, through music, or any other kind of creative outlet, like, making videos or whatever, you want to feel like you're a part of something bigger, like you're either contributing or, because you can't live a life of emptiness. You can't live a life of greed eventually will kill you. But the bad aspect of greed is it takes a lot of people with you. So I can get you on board with Flat Earth. No, you can't, Yukon. I know rich people who are miserable. Yes. I know rich people that are miserable, and I know poor people that are perfectly happy. Discontent also breeds a will within people to actively avoid coming together over common ideas to fix issues and defend themselves for those who want to compromise their well-being. It's how you handle that discontent. That's the thing. It's Pneumatic Brit, how's it going? Again, it goes back to the car. You can look at, like, man, I wish I had a car like that. You can do one of two things. You can either say, how do I do that, and figure that out, or you can sit there and like, I'll never own a car like that. Or, man, if I stole money from 58,000 old ladies, I can get that car, and that's so, there's a difference between discomfort and discontent. Discomfort says we're going to start a rebellion. We're gonna start a revolution. We're going to change things either by the pen or by the sword. But discontent, that's a different animal. Same structure but different animal. So on another note, battling with the brokers was fun yesterday. Have a very good ear too, so I understand exactly what you're hearing. Dice Man going live. Good morning. So, anyways, those are my morning coffee thoughts. If you guys got any comments, questions, concerns, anything that helps you feel better about yourself or better about humanity, we can talk about. I hope you're making money, Dice Man. There's money to be made. Of course, a couple of things just went down at the house, so I got to deal with that. But we're going to try to stay out at least until Monday. We'll see what happens. Hearing is like an art form. Yeah, but you have to, look, you have to quiet the mind to be able to hear. It's kind of funny. So yesterday I was delivering, and this guy, obviously not from this country, checked me in, and I was in a mood. So I thought, how do I combat a bad mood? Well, let's create small talk so my bad energy, my bad frequency doesn't rub off on this guy. And so I was like, so how's it going? And he's like, I'm like, okay. And then I go, I said, I was like, well, yeah, I wasn't sure if I was in the right place because you guys got 2 warehouses, and I'm glad I got here in time. He just kind of looks at me like real blankly, and then I go, um, so how are you doing today? And he looks at me, cocks his head, and he looks at me, he's like, my name is Nort. That's all he said. So I don't know if he had a hearing problem, because when he faced me, he could tell what I was saying, or if he just didn't understand what I was saying. So he tells me door 5, and I'm like, thank you. I nodded, and the universal language too, saying I get it, and then I got into the dock. It was kind of a weird, like, I remember one time I was at McDonald's picking up food for the family. This is like years and years ago. And I go, yeah, I like to order, I think it was like they were doing the bag of burgers or something like that. And I was like, I need 5 cheeseburgers or whatever. And they're like, there's this long pause. And then I heard, sir, we are out of apple pies. And I'm just like, I was very silent for like a minute, because I had no idea where that even came from, because apple pies does not sound like 5 cheeseburgers, I don't know. So it literally threw a wrench in my head. It's just like, boom, mind blown. I was annoyed. It doesn't matter your cosmology. We are all created. You have to internalize God and allow that spirit to grow within you to truly be happy. Only spirituality will save this world. You kind of agree with that. That's the part of being something bigger, right? That's the part of being something bigger. And there's a difference between religion and spirituality. To be spiritual is one thing. To be religious is something different. Wars are fought over religion. People are killed over religion. These are not spiritual people doing this. And that's why religion has always escaped me, and religion is their own worst enemy. And I've noticed a lot of groups that they're their own worst enemy. Like the Tool groups. They'll talk about all these bans that are going to happen, and it's Critical Red, all these riots are going to, they're going to storm your house and take these tools away, and then they gripe when there's no ammo. There's no, or ammo's like $80 for a box of 50. Well, yeah, you guys create that. You guys, all the fear mongering that's on social media. Yeah, you feel like you're a part of something bigger, and you think that you're informing people, but you're not really informing people. You're giving them fear without solutions. I was watching the news the other day. I know, big mistake. And there was a report. It said, one study suggests that sitting in your car, you're being exposed to all these toxic chemicals. And that was it. That was the story. It didn't give you a bunch of numbers. It didn't tell you who did the story or who did the study. It was just like, hey, by the way, sitting in your car is bad for your health because of the chemicals that they use to build your car. What was the point of that story? Do they honestly think that there are people in the car thinking it's the most clean, pristine thing that you could be in? Do people not realize that, it takes chemicals to make a plastic steering wheel or whatever? That story was only designed to create fear and discontent into your soul. And that's the job of social media. That's the job of the news. And that's the job of anybody who wants to control your life. How many people thought the world was going to end, and they do all these videos based off of that, and then right now the world hasn't ended yet, and so they're looking for other things, now we got to be afraid of this. Now we got to be afraid of that because that gets you views, that gets you attention. And it's really kind of annoying. Blame it and turn off the monitors. We're called to be faithful, not religious. Absolutely. Norfolk. Terry, that's funny. Nanu. Glenn Benton. Yeah, Glenn, I've heard from multiple sources that Glenn Benton is a hoot to work with. Those of you who don't know, he's the singer of Deicide, who's very angry at God. You want to go up to Glenn Benton and go, okay, show me on the doll where God hurt you. Oh, man. People are just so sensitive, I guess. I guess I could be sensitive. I've had my moments, for sure. But at any rate, speaking of no crowd, my crowd has left the building, so I appreciate all 17 of you that's in here. Let's see if someone else had gone live that I'm subscribed to. Nope, not really. Nobody I'm subscribed to. But anyways, that's it for morning coffee thoughts. If you're going to shout in an echo chamber, don't be too loud. So, at any rate, thanks for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Hit the thumbs up on the way out. And see you on the flip side. Peace.